My ex-wife tried to stop my son and me from going to Tokyo through court, but her scheme backfired and now she can only watch as I take back everything. I never thought I'd have to fight a war just to take my own son on vacation. Until I realized some people are willing to turn children into weapons to destroy you. My name is Jason Mitchell, I'm 38 years old, and I work as an aerospace engineer. For the past 2 years since my divorce from Rebecca, I thought we had finally found our rhythm as co-parents. Our son Tommy was 8, bright as a button, and deserved better than watching his parents tear each other apart in courtrooms. Looking back, our custody arrangement had always felt deceptively simple on paper. The standard 50-50 split, alternating holidays, shared decision-making on major issues. It all seemed so civilized, so mature. Rebecca's background as a legal assistant actually gave me confidence initially. She knew the system inside and out, understood custody law better than your average divorced parent. I genuinely believed her expertise would help us navigate any disagreements professionally, without the drama that consumed so many other divorced couples. What a fool I was to think her legal knowledge would be used to help our family rather than weaponize it against me. The unraveling began exactly 3 months ago, though I can pinpoint the moment everything shifted. I had casually mentioned my plan to take Tommy to Tokyo during my designated summer custody week. This wasn't some spontaneous whim. Tommy and I had been dreaming about this adventure for the better part of a year. My 8-year-old son was absolutely obsessed with trains, particularly the sleek bullet trains that raced across Japan at incredible speeds. Every night before bed he'd pull up videos on his tablet, watching those magnificent machines glide silently through Japanese countryside. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I'd found myself researching everything from JR pass routes to child-friendly ryokans in Tokyo's quieter districts. I had methodically saved every spare dollar for over 12 months, cutting back on dinners out and weekend trips to build up our Tokyo fund. The flights were booked, our itinerary carefully planned around train museums and scenic routes that would make Tommy's eyes light up. I'd even downloaded language learning apps, practicing basic Japanese phrases with him during our evening walks. When I first mentioned the trip to Rebecca back in March, her response seemed genuinely supportive. "Sounds educational," she'd said, though now I realize that tight-lipped smile should have set off every alarm bell in my head. However, as our departure date crept closer, I began noticing subtle changes in Rebecca's demeanor that made my stomach churn with unease. What started as casual inquiries gradually morphed into an interrogation that felt suffocating and deeply suspicious. Each conversation became more invasive than the last, her questions probing deeper into details she'd never cared about before. The shift was so gradual that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it, until one particular evening when everything crystallized into sharp, painful focus. I was picking Tommy up from her modest townhouse after his baseball practice, the same routine we'd followed countless times without incident. Tommy was chattering excitedly about his upcoming adventure, showing me a new origami crane he'd learned to fold at school, when Rebecca suddenly appeared in the doorway with an expression I'd never seen before. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest, her jaw set in that particular way that meant trouble was brewing. "How do I know you'll bring him back?" The words came out of nowhere, cutting through Tommy's innocent chatter like a blade through silk. The question didn't just surprise me, it physically recoiled through my body like I'd been struck across the face. Here was the woman I'd shared a home with for 6 years, the mother of my child, the person who'd witnessed my devotion to Tommy every single day, questioning my fundamental integrity as a father. 2 years of post-divorce cooperation, of never missing a pickup, of never being late for a return, of treating our custody arrangement as sacred, all of it apparently meant nothing to her in that moment. "Rebecca, come on. You know me better than that," I said, trying to keep my voice calm for Tommy's sake. He was in the living room, playing with his toy trains, completely unaware that his mother was planting seeds of doubt about his father's character. "I'm just saying, it's a long way away. Different country, different laws. What if something happens?" Her voice had this edge to it, like she was already building a case in her mind. Looking back with the painful clarity that only hindsight can provide, all the warning signs had been flashing like neon lights in a dark room. Yet I'd chosen to ignore them completely. Rebecca's controlling nature wasn't some new development that emerged after our divorce. It had been the poison slowly killing our marriage from the very beginning. Her need to micromanage every aspect of our lives, from what we ate for dinner to how we spent our weekends, had gradually suffocated any spontaneity or joy from our relationship. It was precisely this suffocating control that had driven the final wedge between us, forcing me to choose between my sanity and my marriage. In my desperate optimism following our divorce, I had genuinely believed, no, I had desperately hoped, that Rebecca might finally understand the destructive nature of her behavior. I foolishly assumed that losing our marriage might serve as a wake-up call, that she would recognize how her controlling tendencies had cost her everything she claimed to value. Most importantly, I prayed she would never stoop so low as to weaponize our innocent 8-year-old son in whatever twisted psychological warfare she was orchestrating in her mind. But the evidence of her renewed campaign had been accumulating right under my nose for months, and I'd been too trusting, too naive to connect the dots. She had begun meticulously documenting every single interaction between us, no matter how trivial or routine. Every minor disagreement, every casual conversation, every scheduling adjustment, was immediately followed by a formal email summarizing our discussion in language that sounded suspiciously like legal documentation. She started requesting written confirmation for pickup times we'd been following religiously for 2 years without a single issue. Looking back, it was obvious she was constructing an elaborate paper trail, building a case brick by brick, and I was too blind to see the trap closing around me. The final blow came exactly 2 weeks before our scheduled departure to Tokyo, delivered with surgical precision designed for maximum psychological impact. Rebecca called me during my lunch break at the aerospace firm, interrupting what should have been a peaceful moment in my day. Her voice carried none of the familiar warmth or even the cold civility we'd maintained since our divorce. Instead, she spoke with the detached, mechanical tone of someone reading from a carefully rehearsed script, each word calculated for maximum legal protection. "Jason, I've been thinking about this Japan trip, and I'm not comfortable with it anymore. I think we need to postpone." My heart sank. "Rebecca, we've planned this for months. Tommy's been counting down the days. The tickets are non-refundable. I'm sorry, but I'm concerned about his safety. Taking him that far away, to a country where you don't speak the language. It's just not responsible. I've researched everything. We have travel insurance, embassy contact information. His pediatrician gave us all his medical records translated into Japanese just in case." "Rebecca, this is ridiculous. My decision is final, Jason. If you try to take him anyway, I'll contact my lawyer." The line went dead. I sat in my office, staring at the phone, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. This wasn't about Tommy's safety. This was about control. This was about Rebecca finding a way to hurt me, and she was willing to break our son's heart to do it. That night, when I had to tell Tommy that our trip might not happen, I watched his face crumble. This kid who'd been practicing saying arigatou gozaimasu every day for weeks, who'd made lists of all the trains he wanted to see, who'd been showing his friends pictures of Tokyo Station on his tablet. The disappointment in his eyes was devastating. "But Daddy, you promised," he whispered. And I felt like the worst father in the world even though this wasn't my fault. "I know, buddy. Daddy's trying to fix it, okay? Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but that doesn't mean we stop trying." Over the next few days, I tried reasoning with Rebecca. I offered compromises. Shorter trip, different destination, additional check-ins, whatever she needed to feel comfortable. But every conversation felt like talking to a wall. She'd made up her mind, and nothing I said mattered. Worse, she started making subtle threats about my concerning behavior and how she might need to reevaluate the custody arrangement. That's when I realized this wasn't just about one trip. This was bigger. Rebecca had been planning something, and I'd walked right into her trap by giving her an excuse to portray me as irresponsible or dangerous. The woman I'd once loved, the mother of my child, was systematically trying to destroy my relationship with my son. I started keeping detailed records of every interaction, every phone call, every text message. I documented Tommy's excitement about the trip, Rebecca's initial approval, her sudden change of heart. I reached out to our mediator, thinking maybe a neutral third party could help us work through this. But Rebecca refused to participate, claiming she was too concerned about Tommy's well-being to negotiate. 3 days before our scheduled departure, the other shoe dropped. A process server appeared at my door with papers. Rebecca had filed an emergency motion requesting temporary suspension of my custody rights, claiming I posed a threat to Tommy's safety due to my reckless and potentially dangerous plan to remove the child from the country against the mother's wishes. I couldn't breathe. The legal document painted me as some kind of kidnapper, a dangerous father who couldn't be trusted with his own son. It cited my pattern of dismissive behavior toward the mother's legitimate safety concerns, and my refusal to respect boundaries regarding international travel. Reading it felt like being punched in the stomach repeatedly. The hearing was scheduled for the day before our flight. Rebecca's lawyer had calculated it perfectly. Even if I won, there wouldn't be time to make the trip. She'd found a way to hurt Tommy and destroy my credibility as a father all in one move. I spent the next 2 days in a frantic rush to prepare my defense. I hired the best family lawyer I could afford, gathered every piece of evidence that showed what a devoted father I was. Bank statements proving I'd been saving for this trip for over a year. Email chains showing my careful planning and research. Photos of Tommy and me at every school event, every baseball game, every father-son outing. Character references from his teachers, his coaches, even Rebecca's own mother, who'd always liked me better than she liked her daughter's attitude. Most importantly, I had Rebecca's own words. Text messages from months earlier. "Tokyo sounds like a great adventure for you two. And Tommy won't stop talking about the bullet trains. You're such a good dad for planning this." Email confirmations where she'd acknowledged and approved the travel dates. Her own initial enthusiasm before she decided to weaponize the trip against me. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Tommy, who was staying with Rebecca and probably confused about why Daddy suddenly couldn't see him. I thought about all the other divorced fathers who'd been through similar hell, painted as dangerous or irresponsible by vindictive ex-wives who cared more about winning than about their children's happiness. But I also felt something I hadn't expected: clarity. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't just reacting to Rebecca's attacks. I was fighting back with facts, with evidence, with the truth. She'd overplayed her hand, and I was going to make sure the court saw exactly what kind of person she really was. The hearing was held in a cramped courtroom that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Rebecca sat across the aisle with her lawyer, looking every inch the concerned mother in her conservative business suit. She'd even brought tissues, probably planning to cry on cue. I wanted to throw up looking at her, knowing how calculated every detail of her performance was. Her lawyer went first, painting a picture of a reckless father who wanted to drag his innocent child to a foreign country despite the mother's reasonable objections. They made it sound like I was planning to disappear into the Japanese wilderness with Tommy strapped to my back. It was so absurd it would have been funny if it weren't destroying my life. "Your Honor," Rebecca's attorney said with practiced concern, "my client has serious and legitimate fears about her ex-husband's judgment. His insistence on this trip, despite her clearly stated concerns, demonstrates a troubling pattern of dismissiveness toward her parental rights and her child's well-being." When it was my turn, my lawyer methodically dismantled their case piece by piece. We presented Rebecca's original approval of the trip. We showed the court my detailed planning, the safety precautions, the travel insurance, the medical preparations. We demonstrated that I'd been nothing but a responsible, loving father for the past 2 years. But the real bombshell came when my lawyer presented evidence of Rebecca's pattern of behavior. It turned out this wasn't her first attempt to use the legal system as a weapon. During our divorce proceedings, she'd made similar accusations about my parenting that were later proven false. She'd filed complaints with Tommy's school about my inappropriate behavior at pickup that were investigated and dismissed. She had a history of crying wolf whenever she didn't get her way. "Your Honor," my attorney said, "this isn't about child safety. This is about a vindictive ex-wife using the court system to harass and control her former husband. Miss Collins has turned parenting into warfare, and the only casualty is their son." I watched Rebecca's face as the evidence mounted against her. The confident, concerned mother act started cracking. Her lawyer kept glancing at her with increasing concern, probably realizing they'd walked into a courtroom woefully unprepared for what we'd brought. The judge was a woman in her 60s, who'd clearly seen this kind of case before. She listened patiently to both sides, but I could see her expression growing more skeptical as Rebecca's lawyer struggled to respond to our evidence. "Miss Collins," the judge said finally, "I'm troubled by what I'm hearing. You initially approved this trip, but now claim it's dangerous. You've provided no evidence that Mr. Mitchell has ever been anything but a responsible father. Can you explain this discrepancy? Rebecca took the stand, and I watched her try to spin a story about growing concerns and new information that made her worry about the trip. But under cross-examination, she fell apart. She couldn't explain what specific new information had changed her mind. She couldn't provide any evidence of dangerous behavior on my part. She kept contradicting herself, getting tangled up in her own lies. The breaking point came when my lawyer asked her directly, "Ms. Collins, isn't it true that you're opposing this trip not because of safety concerns, but because you want to punish Mr. Mitchell for having the audacity to plan something special with his son without your permission?" "That's not. I would never," Rebecca stammered, but the damage was done. Everyone in that courtroom could see the truth written all over her face. The judge didn't even need to recess to make her decision. "I find Ms. Collins's petition to be without merit and potentially frivolous. Mr. Mitchell has demonstrated exceptional responsibility in planning this trip, and there is no credible evidence suggesting any danger to the child. The emergency motion is denied." But she wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I'm deeply concerned about the pattern of behavior I see here. Ms. Collins, you appear to be using this court as a weapon against your ex-husband, which is not only inappropriate but harmful to your child. I'm ordering a full review of the custody arrangement." Rebecca went white. This wasn't just about losing the motion anymore. She'd opened a door she couldn't close. Over the next 2 months, while Tommy and I were supposed to be in Tokyo, we rescheduled for later that year, the custody review proceeded. The court appointed a guardian ad litem to investigate our family situation. Social workers interviewed Tommy, his teachers, our neighbors. They reviewed 2 years of custody arrangements, looking at who showed up for school events, who took him to doctor appointments, who helped with homework. The picture that emerged was devastating for Rebecca. While I'd been present and engaged, she'd been treating Tommy like a possession to be controlled. The guardian ad litem's report noted that Tommy felt anxious and stressed at his mother's house, always worried about saying the wrong thing that might get his dad in trouble. Meanwhile, he was relaxed and happy during his time with me. Rebecca's own behavior during the review process sealed her fate. She tried to coach Tommy on what to say to the investigators. She continued making false accusations about my parenting. She even attempted to have me followed by a private investigator, hoping to find something, anything, that would support her claims. The final hearing was nothing like the emergency motion. This time, Rebecca sat alone. Her lawyer had withdrawn from the case, probably tired of defending the indefensible. She'd burned through 3 attorneys during the review process, each one realizing they were fighting a losing battle for a client who wouldn't stop making their job impossible. Based on the evidence presented, the judge announced, "I find that Ms. Collins has repeatedly demonstrated a pattern of behavior detrimental to the best interests of the child. Her attempts to manipulate the legal system and alienate the child from his father are unacceptable. Primary custody is hereby awarded to Mr. Mitchell, with supervised visitation for Ms. Collins pending completion of a CO parenting education program." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only had I won, but Tommy was coming home with me full-time. The judge had seen through Rebecca's act completely and recognized her for what she was, a manipulative person who cared more about winning than about her son's well-being. Rebecca's world crumbled in ways I couldn't have imagined. Word spread through her workplace about the custody case, and suddenly her colleagues were seeing her in a new light. The same woman who'd always portrayed herself as the victim of a difficult divorce was revealed to be the aggressor. Her reputation as a legal assistant took a massive hit. How could clients trust someone who'd abused the legal system so blatantly? She lost friends too. Parents at Tommy's school had watched the drama unfold, and they'd seen which parent showed up consistently, which one caused scenes at pickup, which one put their child's needs first. Rebecca found herself increasingly isolated, the natural consequence of her own actions. But the real consequences were financial. The court ordered her to pay my legal fees, nearly $15,000, as punishment for filing frivolous motions. Her own legal bills were even higher. She'd spent more money trying to destroy me than I'd saved for our Tokyo trip, and she had nothing to show for it except a damaged relationship with her son and supervised visitation rights. The hardest part was watching Tommy process everything. He was old enough to understand that something serious had happened, even if he didn't grasp all the legal details. He asked me once why Mommy had tried to stop us from going on our trip, and I struggled to find an age-appropriate answer that didn't completely destroy his relationship with his mother. Sometimes people make mistakes when they're scared or angry, I told him. Mommy was worried about you going so far away, but she handled her worry in the wrong way. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you, buddy. It just means she needs to learn better ways to show that love. I could have poisoned Tommy against Rebecca completely. I had ammunition that would have lasted years. All her lies, her manipulation, her willingness to hurt him to get back at me. But that would have made me just as bad as her. Tommy deserved better than two parents who used him as a weapon against each other. 6 months later, we finally made our trip to Tokyo. Tommy was 9 by then, even more excited about trains, and the experience was everything we'd hoped for and more. We rode the bullet trains from Tokyo to Kyoto and back. We ate sushi and ramen and tried to use our broken Japanese with patient locals who smiled at Tommy's enthusiasm. We visited temples and museums and took about 1,000 pictures. But the best part wasn't the sights or the food or even the trains. It was seeing Tommy relaxed and happy, not walking on eggshells or worrying about saying the wrong thing. He was just a kid on vacation with his dad, free to be excited and curious and spontaneous without fear of somehow causing trouble. On our last night in Tokyo, as we sat in our hotel room looking out at the city lights, Tommy said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Daddy, I'm glad we got to come here together. I was scared for a while that we never would." "Me too, buddy. But we're here now, and that's what matters." "Will Mommy be okay?" he asked, and I could hear the worry in his voice. Despite everything she'd put us through, he still loved her. That's the thing about kids. Their capacity for forgiveness is infinite, even when adults don't deserve it. "Mommy will be fine," I told him. "She's learning how to be a better co-parent, and hopefully she'll remember that the most important thing is making sure you're happy and healthy. That's what both of us should want." Rebecca did complete her CO parenting classes eventually. Her supervised visits with Tommy gradually became unsupervised again, though she only got him every other weekend now instead of half-time. She learned to bite her tongue when she disagreed with my parenting decisions. She stopped trying to control situations she had no right to control. I don't think she ever truly understood how close she came to losing Tommy completely. If she'd kept escalating, kept filing frivolous motions, kept trying to use the courts as her personal weapon, she might have found herself with no visitation rights at all. The judge had made it clear that one more stunt like the Tokyo incident would result in exactly that outcome. Sometimes I wonder if Rebecca actually believes her own narrative, that she was just a concerned mother trying to protect her child. I think on some level she's convinced herself that her motives were pure, that she was the victim in all of this. It's easier than admitting she was willing to sacrifice her son's happiness to hurt her ex-husband. But I don't spend much time thinking about Rebecca anymore. My focus is on Tommy, on building the kind of relationship where he feels safe to be himself, where he knows he can trust me to put his needs first. He's 11 now, still obsessed with trains but also developing interests in robotics and video game design. He talks about wanting to visit Japan again when he's older, maybe even study there someday. We have a good life together. I've learned to be both mother and father when he's with me, to handle everything from packed lunches to emotional meltdowns with equal patience. Tommy has thrived in the stability of knowing where he'll be sleeping each night, of not being used as a messenger between warring parents, of having one home that's truly peaceful. The whole experience taught me something important about the difference between fighting for your children and fighting over them. When you fight for your children, you're protecting their well-being, their happiness, their right to love both parents freely. When you fight over them, you're treating them like property to be won or lost, like trophies in a game only adults understand. I fought for Tommy, and I won something more valuable than any custody arrangement. I won his trust, his respect, and the knowledge that I'd always choose his well-being over my own desire for revenge. Rebecca fought over him and lost not just the custody battle, but the chance to be the kind of mother Tommy deserved. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for that whole nightmare period. It forced me to become a better father, a stronger advocate for my son, and ultimately led to us having the stable, loving relationship we have today. Tommy doesn't have to split his time between two homes that feel like armed camps. He has one home where he's safe and loved unconditionally, and regular visits with a mother who's finally learned that loving your child means putting their needs before your own ego. I still keep all the legal documents from that custody battle in a file cabinet. Not because I expect to need them again, but as a reminder of how far we've come. Sometimes when I'm having a particularly good day with Tommy, when we're building Lego trains together, or he's telling me about something cool he learned at school, I think about that scared, angry father sitting in a courtroom 2 years ago, fighting for the right to take his son on vacation. That man couldn't have imagined how much better life would get once the truth came to light. He was just trying to survive Rebecca's attacks and protect his relationship with his son. He had no idea he was about to win not just a legal battle, but the chance to give Tommy the childhood he deserved. One filled with adventure and stability in equal measure. One where being excited about bullet trains and Tokyo Station was enough to make dreams come true. The last time we talked about those difficult months, Tommy said something that made me realize we'd both grown up a lot during that time. "Dad, I'm glad you didn't give up on our trip. It would have been sad if we let someone else's fear stop us from having adventures together." I learned that sometimes protecting your children isn't just about keeping them safe from physical harm. It's about keeping them safe from the poison of adult conflicts, from being used as weapons in wars they didn't start and can't understand. It's about showing them that love doesn't mean control, that being a parent means wanting your child to be happy more than you want to be right. And most importantly, I learned that when you stand up for what's right, when you fight for truth instead of fighting for revenge, justice has a way of revealing itself. Not always quickly, not always easily, but eventually. Tommy and I took that trip to Tokyo, and we've taken many more adventures since then. But the real journey was learning that family isn't about winning or losing. It's about choosing love over fear, trust over control, and your child's happiness over your own pride every single time.